Hello my dear children, I am Anupama. I welcome you to Nagesh Karasgi Orchid School channel once again. I am here to teach you a lesson in English for grade 9 and the lesson number is lesson number 6 and the name of the lesson is Weathering the Storm Inersama, which is in your Moments textbook supplementary reader, and you have to open page number 37 in your textbook. So let's begin with this chapter. My dear children, weathering the storm Inersama. The word, when we come across storm, it has got to do with something cyclonic effect. This, before we actually begin with this chapter, I would like to give you some detailed information about this incident when it took place. My dear children, this is the incident in the year 1999, October 27. Everybody remembers this disaster because in the year 1999, there was a super cyclone which ranks among the worst natural disaster in India. And the intensity of this catastrophic storm was like, because it was so strong, the intensity was so strong that the winds rushed or gushed with the speed of somewhere 350 kilometers per hour, my dear children. Now you can imagine that how the devastation would be of this cyclone. And after many efforts which were taken by the government, but the government even did not have an idea that till what extent this catastrophic or natural calamity will devastate or destroy everything. And once it hit the Orissa, that's a former one, now it's called as Odisha, which is the coastal area near Bay of Bengal, okay. And when it attacked that area or that region, at that time the government had left with no option. It was all surprised, but it had no option but just to watch the devastation what was played by this super cyclone. My dear children, do you have any idea? Do you know what's the name of this super cyclone? This is Phelani. Phelani is the super cyclone which was named by IMD, and then we could even see, or it is still remembered, the devastation was in that extent that it killed somewhere 10,000 of people in the coastal area, as well as somewhere 3.5 lakh of houses were completely washed away. Many of the villages were swept away by the flood water, as well as more than 2 lakh animals were died. So there was such a super cyclone that it devastated Orissa state like anything, and the government had no option simply to watch the what we can say the disaster or the devastation that was done by this super cyclone. So now here also we are going to come across one story, that's the original or the true story. I mean, there were many survivors. Survivors means what? The people, those who happened to survive after this disaster, the one who has actually witnessed this all devastation that is caused by this catastrophic or this natural calamity, and then they witnessed everything unluckily, and then they have survived, and they have so many stories to tell about them, people around them. So here we are going to see one of the story of a boy named Prashant, who is young, who is teenager, who is the survivor and who even helped other people to come out of this catastrophic super cyclone. My dear children, even recently we have come across one super cyclone, that is Ampan, and even you people would have must have seen that the catastrophic has devastated this state once again like anything. So in the year 1999, somewhat the effect was like Ampan or more than Ampan. This Phelani super cyclone devastated whole Odisha state. So now we are going to talk the story of Prashant, who faced this natural calamity with lot of strength, with lot of courage. He helped people survive, and then what all things he did for everybody. We'll see everything in detail. So I request all my dear children to open page number 37 in your Moments textbook. Be with pen or pencil in the hand, because I am going to read the chapter and explain you the difficult word meaning along with that. Let's begin, my dear children. Weathering the storm in Inersama. Weathering means nothing, but it says to face something, to face the storm, or to face the hardship, or to face the difficulty of life. Now here weathering, what we are going to see, the storm. Storm is nothing but the super cyclone that slammed Odisha state on 27th of October 1999, and it destroyed many villages all of a sudden. And where it happened, now the story particularly which we are talking about, Prashant, the story is in Inersama. Inersama is nothing but the small town in Odisha state. Odisha state is near the coastal line near the Bay of Bengal. And my dear children, we know very well that the states those are nearby coastal line. Whenever such super cyclones have to happen, these are the first states to get devastated or affected by any of the cyclone. And obviously Odisha, it is near the coastal line of Bay of Bengal, and so the reason it was highly affected by the super cyclone. So let's read everything in detail. Before I start with the chapter, I am going to read the outline of the story, everyone with that. The cyclone that hit Orissa, Orissa is the former name, now it's Odisha, okay, in October 1999, killed thousands of people and devastated is nothing but to destroy hundreds of villages. So as I told you, the super cyclone had that catastrophic effect that it killed more than 10,000 people, my dear children. You can understand how devastating it would be, how horrible it would be. As well as it killed more than 2.5 lakh animals, as well as more than 3.5 lakh villages were washed away, swept away because of the flood water. For 2 dreadful nights, dreadful, that is something which is horrible, fearful nights, Prashant, a young man who marooned means nothing but to get trapped, to get confined at one place wherein you cannot move from that place, on the roof of a house. So now exactly whom we are going to talk about? We are going to talk about Prashant, who is a young man, who is a teenager, and who ultimately had to survive for 2 nights that were the dreadful, horrible nights where he was supposed to live on the roof of the house, wherein he was completely trapped over there. He couldn't move out of that place. And then on the 3rd day, he decided to go to his village, and then finally he decided to go to village. That means what? Where he was exactly at the time when he was trapped on that roof of the house. We'll see everything in detail, and there's a question being asked to the students that did he find his family? Oh, that's a crucial question, that's very important, that he had been to some another place wherein he exactly did not have idea that there's going to be a super cyclone which is going to slam everything, which is going to devastate everything, which is going to destroy many villages. And when he was at that particular place, on the 3rd day, he thought that he should go back to his original village where he actually been and brought up, and there was a big question for him that whether his family was very much alive and whether his village was all right. So there's been question asked to the readers, to the students or the audience, that did he find his family? So my dear children, let's go to the journey of Prashant, that where he was exactly at the time when the super cyclone slammed, and then which is the original place where he actually belongs to, and whether he was successful to discover his family back. Let's begin with the chapter now. On 27th of October 1999, 7 years after his mother's death, Prashant had gone to the block headquarters of Inersama, a small town in coastal Orissa, some 18 kilometers from his village, to spend the day with a friend. So that's the answer for our question, that on this 27th October 1999, that's the deadliest day for the state of Orissa, where this super cyclone devastated the life of thousands of people. And this fellow Prashant, who had gone 18 kilometers away from the village, and where he had been to the block headquarters. Now my dear children, underline the word block headquarters. Block headquarters is nothing but, now see, as we say, Maharashtra is the state, Solapur is the district, and then we have sub towns like Akkalkot, Mangalveda, in this way, isn't it? So in the same sense, Orissa is the state and Jagatsinghpura is the district, and every district is again subdivided into blocks. So here Inersama had the headquarters, block headquarters, where Prashant had been, and he was away from his village somewhere 18 kilometers. So where Prashant exactly lived? He lived in Kalikuda. Kalikuda was the village where Prashant actually lived, and the distance which he had travelled from Kalikuda to Inersama was 18 kilometers away. And the reason is quite clear, that he had been to Inersama to meet one of his friend over there. And this incident, which incident talking about 27th of October 1999, happened to have with Prashant the main protagonist of the story, wherein he has lost his mother 7 years back. That means after losing his mother 7 years, after that this incident has happened with Prashant. What happens? We'll see everything in detail. In evening, a dark and menacing means very harmful, very dangerous storm quickly gathered means it came all together. Winds beat against the houses with a speed and fury. Speed and fury is nothing but the extreme strength of something. That means the strong wind started to blow, that Prashant had never witnessed, that means he had never seen before. Heavy and incessant means continuously, non-stop, which is like unceasing means the one which cannot be stopped for once. So heavy and incessant rain filled the darkness. Ancient trees were uprooted and crashed to the earth. So now we can see that that night or that day when Prashant had been to Inersama, all the way away 18 kilometers away from his Kalikuda village to meet his friend, that night what he could see, that there were some dark clouds, those were hovering in the sky, and those clouds were so dark that they seemed to be very harmful, very hazardous or very dangerous. And at the same time, even he could feel the winds that were blowing so harsh, and the speed of and the fury that of the speed of the wind was that Prashant had never ever experienced such intensity of the wind. So probably that's the signal that the super cyclone is about to come and slam the entire village. That was the signal given by the natural calamity. And then at that time he could see that heavy rain started to come, as well as it started to rain actually, as well as the raining was so harsh that it was unstoppable, it was continuous, it was unceasing, and that's the reason the rain filled with darkness in that evening. Because of rain, because of the dark clouds, the whole evening appeared to be very dark and dull. As well as the effect of those winds, those were gushing with that speed. What effect it had? It had the ancient trees were uprooted. Ancient means the old trees were uprooted and crashed to the earth. Why this statement is very important, my dear children? Because if you have seen those old tall trees, Their roots are anchored deep underneath the earth, and they can hold or they can survive any sort of devastation of natural calamity. But this devastation of super cyclone which got attacked on 1999, in the year 1999 on 27th of October, that was with very high speed. The intensity of the speed was somewhere around 300 to 350 kilometers per hour, my dear children. Please, you can imagine that devastation, how horrible it could be. So even for those olden trees, those were deep down underground, grounded, whose roots were anchored down, even they cannot tolerate the intensity of the wind that was blowing with that harshness, and even those trees were completely uprooted. Uprooted means what? If, my dear children, if you have experienced, or even in televisions, recently we have seen the ill effects of Ampin cyclone, which even attacked the same state. And on the television set, sitting at home, we have seen that what were the effects, ill effects of this cyclone. We can see everywhere the houses were filled with water, the houses were swept away because of the flood water. Even you can see there were many deaths of human beings as well as animals. At the same time, we even could see that the trees, the olden trees, they are completely uprooted. Uprooted means what? They have completely fallen on the earth or the ground, along with the roots. Those were the anchoring, those were the actual support to withhold the tree, the tall huge tree. So even we can see those roots of the trees. So this was the dangerous effect or the ill effect of this cyclone. Even the olden trees were uprooted. They couldn't withstand, they couldn't tolerate this intensity of wind. And then screams, rent means they filled. Screams is nothing but the hue and cry. They were shouting, the people were crying, they were running here and there was hustle and bustle. They could know that something is going to happen wrong, but they did not have idea, tinge of idea, that what exactly is going to happen after a couple of minutes or hours. So this was this, the scenario. You can simply imagine how horrible it could be. The people started to scream. The whole air or the whole atmosphere was filled with the cries or the worries of the people. Air, as people and houses were swiftly washed away. Swiftly washed away means what? All of a sudden, because of that heavy rain, because of that cyclone, because of that wind, the entire village as well as those houses were quickly, swiftly means quickly washed away. They were washed away all of a sudden. The angry water swirled in his friend's house neck deep. So now the angry water swirled, underline the word swirled is nothing but, if you have seen the whirling movement of the water, that is round, circling in the round way. So you know how cyclone exactly happens. That's you must have learned in geography lessons also, that cyclone is nothing but when there is some movements, very harsh movements deep inside the sea, ocean, and then slowly the effect of that, as the cyclone keeps on moving towards the land, then the same effect can be seen on the ground also. So when this incident actually started to happen, the angry waters means what? When this was happening, when this catastrophe was taking place, it seemed that the water was so angry, it was so fiery that it was swirling round and round, and where it was into his friend's house. And what was the depth or the depth of the water? It was somewhere neck deep. Neck deep means what? Like for example, if this is the house and if I am standing here, and if this house is filled with the water, the flood water, then the house was filled till this length, till this height, that hardly you could peep out from that, and only you can take out your neck and see exactly what is what happening. So till this length the water was filled where? In Prashant's friend house. The building was of brick and mortar, underline the word mortar, and was strong enough to survive the devastation, underline the word devastation, of the wind's velocity of 350 kilometers per hour. Very important. So now the building which was of Prashant's friend's house, it was made of brick. Brick, we know, brick. And mortar. So what is mortar? Mortar is nothing but the mixture of lime, cement as well as sand and water which is used to construct the building. Means rather Prashant's friend's house was a pakka house. So the reason it was made of bricks and cement. This is the mixture wherein we paste between two bricks and then it helps to constitute to form or erect the entire building. So somewhere we could see that Prashant's friend's house was a pakka house. So the reason this house could tolerate the intensity of the wind, which was how much? The velocity was what? 350 kilometers per hour. But the cold terror is nothing but the extreme fear of the family grew with the crashing of the trees that had got uprooted and fallen on their house sometime in the middle of the night, damaging its roof and walls. So even we can see at that moment when the wind started to blow, when the wind started to gush with the speed of 350 kilometers per hour, as Prashant's friend's house was a pakka house, so it could tolerate, it could endure, it could take everything, the devastation what was being caused by the super cyclone. But luckily as the house was erected with cement and bricks, so the reason much of devastation could not be seen at Prashant's friend's house. But why this family, Prashant's friend's family, was worried? Because at night time, in the middle of night, what they could see that some trees were crashed, some olden trees were crashed. Where it were crashed, they were uprooted and they were damaging, they fell on the roof of the building and they damaged some part of the roof and some part of the wall. But then too the building was strong enough to withstand or withhold the hazardous effect of this super cyclone. We'll see next. The crazed destruction, crazed means the maddened destruction of this super cyclone. As the statement even says that how it is, the cold terror or the angry waters. Yeah, this is what, how beautifully it has been mentioned, isn't it? As if the water seemed to be very angry, as if the terror was like cold and it was frightful night, everything. These words makes us go in that imagination and actually try to experience that how the scenario could be, how the hue and cry of the people would be, how fearful the evening and the nights must be passed by those people when whosoever unfortunately have witnessed this catastrophic disaster. You can imagine, my dear children, I know sitting there you even can start dramatizing the scenario right in front of your eyes. And then so the reason when the trees started uprooting and falling on the roof of the Prashant's friend's house, some part of the roof started to damage, even some part of walls started to damage. The crazed destruction wrought means something because of the effect of that cyclone. Wrought is nothing, brought by, because of the effect of any natural calamity, you can write. Wrought by the cyclone and the surge is nothing but the force of the ocean continued for next 36 hours, although wind speeds had reduced somewhat by the next morning. So now you can see the disaster continued to happen in this village for continuously 36 hours. Now we know a day is of 24 hours and then it still continued more than that. Then somewhere we can see that it continued for 1.5 days probably, and this destruction kept on continuing for 1.5 days, but rather we can see that the speed of wind was somewhat, the velocity of this wind was little bit reduced, and then by next morning somewhere it was reduced. To escape the waters rising in the house, Prashant and his friend's family had taken refuge. Refuge is nothing but to take shelter somewhere, refuge on the roof. So as We have understood that when the heavy rain started, so when it started to rain heavily and the flood water, when it started to enter inside the houses of the entire village, what was the height of that? Somewhere it was neck deep. So the reason it is very difficult for the entire family to stand over there, or to tolerate that flood water. So they had left with one option, that wherein they had to go top of the floor, I mean the roof of the terrace, wherein they could feel safe, or they took shelter over there, and they stayed for entire how many days? We can see almost somewhere 2 days somewhere they had to take the refuge on the floor. Prashant will never forget the shock he experienced at his first glimpse. Glimpse is nothing but the sight of the devastation brought by the super cyclone in the grey light of the early morning. So though it was early morning, but still it was dark. So the reason, this was the first time wherein Prashant had ever experienced this devastation of super cyclone, and then the writer says that Prashant would never forget this incident ever in his life, which was brought by this super cyclone. It devastated, it destroyed the entire village like anything right in front of the people of that village, and they had not left with any option simply to see sitting on the rooftop of the building wherein they had taken refuge over there. They thought that's the safety place where they can wait and watch till the water resides, till the effects of the super cyclone would get reduced. Then ragging is nothing but the intensity, you can say a ragging. Deadly means what? Something which caused to death. Brown sheet of water means probably the water which covered the entire village was mixed with the soil that was there on the ground. So the brown sheet of water covered everything as far as the eye could see. Only fractured cement houses still stood in a few places. So what was the ill effect of this super cyclone? Later on, wherever you could see, wherever your sight could reach, what Prashant could see, that the entire village was swept away. The water was turned completely brownish in color. The effect of this cyclone was so deadly that it killed thousands of people all of a sudden, and so the reason he couldn't forget this incident till now in his life. And then he even could see that the entire village was swept away by the super cyclone, but only cement houses, including Prashant's friend house, that could still stood, because cement houses are the pakka houses wherein they can endure, or where they can withstand the intensity of the super cyclone. And so the reason he only could see that at few distance places there were only broken cement houses, or else everything was washed away by the water in few places. So my dear children, in this session what we have seen, we came to know about the 1999 super cyclone Philani, which attacked or slammed Odisha state on 27th of October 1999, which killed more than 10,000 people, and government even did not have option but just to watch the devastating effect of this super cyclone. And then even we have encountered, or we have started to see with one story of Prashant, who is the main protagonist of the story, and he had been to one place, Inersama, and he has witnessed this super cyclone sitting on the rooftop at his friend's house with entire family. And then what happens next? Whether he is able to go back to his village, whether he is able to find back his family, what happens with Prashant and the entire friend's family, we'll see everything in detail. Till the time, I'll rest my session over here. I hope you have understood and underlined the difficult word meaning which I have told you. Till the time, take care. Bye everyone.